First and foremost, my name is Grant. I'm on the sales team here at DiligenceVault. Um, Today, for this episode of our webinar series, we're going to be covering AI for IR teams. More specifically, how can teams utilize Gen AI to efficiently respond to RFPs, DDQs, and then we'll also cover some other use cases just to help with the overall diligence process. Um, but with that, we can kick into that. And before also, any questions that you guys have, please use the Q&A section. If you click on, it should be at the bottom. If not, just click the More tab. Instead of using the actual chat, just use the Q&A portion, and then we'll answer some live. We'll maybe type back to some, but we'll be sure to cover if there's any questions. Just throw those in the Q&A, but appreciate it. Awesome.
And we'll leave the polls running just a little bit longer. It looks like some responses are still flowing through. So Grant, I'll just kick it off with you, back to you, I guess.
Yeah. Awesome. And Dave, can you go back to the first slide? Nice. So if we just take a step back for a second, I know this is a funny slide to pop up on the beginning of an AI webinar, but if we take a step back and let's pretend that we are in the 1920s. So you can close your eyes if you have to. I know it's a bad picture of me. Odds are majority of those on this call would not be working in asset management if it was back in the 1920s. Maybe a few. I know I wouldn't be working in tech sales. It's more likely you'd be working a manual labor job, like let's say a lumberjack, for example. So sure, being a lumberjack, you'd probably be healthier. You're swinging that axe all day long. But the number of trees you cut down is significantly dependent on how long you can stay out there and swing that axe. It's time consuming, it's tiring, and quite frankly, it's annoying. So what changed in the 1920s? Prohibition. Us lumberjacks, we had two options. We want to make money. We can drop the axe, start selling some bootleg whiskey, or we can invest in technology, which brings us to the chainsaw. Think of the chainsaw to lumberjacks as Gen AI to IR teams working on DDQs and RFPs. It's the same job. It's dramatically more output. It's far less effort, and it's a whole lot of time spent on a lot of other tasks at hand that are probably more important to us. I hope we got a smile or at least a giggle out of that analogy, but now we can reel it back in and focus more on the IR teams. So a lot of the conversations that we have with IR teams, and I say IR, we can say client service, RFP, whatever it may be at your firm. A lot of the pain points that are brought up to me are consistent. So what we hear from a lot of these individuals and teams are there's an increased number of investor requests that are being sent to managers. With those questionnaires that are being sent to us, complexity is up. So they're coming through all these different avenues, whether it's over email and Word and Excel, maybe they're in other investor portals, and it's inconsistent, the data formats. They're all not in the same format, which makes it tricky for us on our end to quickly respond to all these requests. The information that we're using from our end to help respond to these questionnaires is coming from all these different fragmented data sources. So we're going to the compliance team and using information they have. We're going to previously completed questionnaires, pulling information from there. Maybe we're pulling from like our own standard DDQ, whatever it may be. We're pulling from all these different areas to answer one questionnaire, and it's tricky. With the number of questionnaires that we're receiving from these investors, we find ourselves answering the same answer over and over again. So these investors are essentially asking the same thing. Maybe it's asked a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, we're still going to have to respond to it on a day-to-day basis, quarterly basis, whatever it may be. With the increase of questionnaires, and I had mentioned it before, we're going to all these different team members. We're roping in compliance, legal, investment. It creates a clunky process of going to, okay, hey, I'm sending an email here and getting information or an answer for this question, and then I have to send it to legal compliance to get sign off. And with all that becomes version control challenges. So how do we know who made a change and when it's the final version? And essentially, how do we keep things centralized in one location before returning it to the investor so we don't have a mess of all these different changes to our information? And that kind of leads us overall with these pain points here to two main questions. So one, how can we quickly generate a strong first draft on a DDQ RFP using our own existing materials? And two, how can we standardize the wide range of questionnaires that we receive from investors? If we focus on this first one here, so how can we quickly generate a strong first draft using our existing materials? We can then jump into um, more on diligence while I'm taking the next one.
Sorry.
You're good. It's a sensitive mouse. DiligenceVault's AI-powered IR workflow. So with our Doc AI functionality, we can actually take a stab at, okay, hey, how can we use Gen AI to efficiently respond to some of these questionnaires we're receiving? So to lay out the framework, one, we can take documents, so think policies, decks, reports, compliance manuals, marketing materials, where we say, hey, these documents have great content that can help us respond and give answers to an RFP or DDQ we're working on. Maybe it's not an exact Q&A format. Maybe we have images, charts, tables, whatever it may be, but it has the content that we can use to generate responses. We can select those documents, whether they're on our computer, whether they're in our DiligenceVault document repository, and then the system can then analyze those documents and generate net new responses on a DDQ or RFP that we're working on. Obviously, when we're pulling from all these different data sources, we don't want to be pulling blind. So the next person that comes in to view that information isn't like, hey, where did this come from? What even is the context of this answer here? So we want to make sure we have review ready outputs. The source history under each generated response will show us exactly how confident it was in the information that was pulled. Obviously, we'll be able to see the extracted content. We'll be able to see exact citations for where it was pulled from. And then, of course, we'll be able to see any context-based gaps. So if, say, the answer, we were able to pull part of the answer from the document, but it was also missing some of the context based off the question that's being asked, the source history will tell you, hey, this is what's missing from the answer based off the question. This is what you need to add to improve your response. So the next person that's coming in to review that information, they're not starting from square one. They have a basis to work off of, and they have an almost a review in itself before they come in to actually review it. Maintain consistency as we're pulling from all these different documents. So again, from different teams, compliance, legal, investment teams, IR teams, the language between those documents can differ. But as we use AI to combine that information into one source of truth on the DDQs or RFPs, we're starting to standardize our own language and what we give back to investors on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, at the end of the day, as you can imagine, we're using AI, we're accelerating the turnaround times and the amount of time it takes to complete a questionnaire and get it back to the investors, just creating happier relationships with our clients. So that's a quick rundown of the workflow. And now I'll pass it to Dave, who will actually show us live in platform what this workflow looks like.
Thanks, Grant. I'm going to end the poll now. Looks like the majority of the responses are in. For that third question, what would make AI most valuable for you and your team? Faster turnaround is the leading response for that. With our tool, we're finding some success there. So essentially what we'll do is, number one, remind you of kind of where we're at with our AI capabilities, for which we've launched about a year ago, the AI Writer, and more recently, the Document AI tool. So we'll focus on that mostly. But the idea is that you can potentially combine the two, the AI Writer and Doc AI, to help streamline your response time. So let me just start sharing my DiligenceVault screen here. So just bear with me right now. Perfect. So with our Doc AI tool, it's driven through these projects where either you'll get them from an investor, or maybe you'll start one on your own using a standard DDQ or maybe some other internal documents, for which you can auto-populate or AI generate from those docs using this feature here. In some cases, you could potentially target specific subcategories if necessary, maybe a firm level pitch book here, maybe a compliance manual here, for example, or rather just open that up more broadly to all the categories. where potentially you have already uploaded documents via Diligence Vault, your Documents tab, for example. You can pull from them or maybe just add in a net new document. As you can see, PDF, Excel, Word, PowerPoint will work. And in this case, when it's done running, when you've done auto-populating the questions as drafts, this AI autofill summary will come up. So this is just helping to remind you of what's happened, what documents you've uploaded, and the breakdown of the actual responses that were generated from them. So if for whatever reason the response is not found in the document, it will leave it blank. But this is a methodology we're seeing so that it can help streamline the review approach of things. So, of course, you're probably reviewing everything, line by line. With high confidence, though, the idea is that potentially you don't need to get so granular, not letter by letter, for example, but you can quickly jump back and forth between the categorization of high and low confidence using this kind of filter button. Grant was talking about the attribution and the source information that will come when you use this tool. Source doc, confidence score, and AI reasoning, as well as the response. They're all driven by multiple LLMs, large language models, and some that are helping to just simply kind of create this verification check threshold, essentially. And, this question is asking for the registration numbers. The AI reasoning is basically saying within the document, the registration number for FCA does not exist. So this is helping you to check that and understand that. Now, what you can do is you can click on this link and it'll open up the document or documents that you've uploaded. In the near future, there will be a highlighted section that will, associate back to the question being asked. So that's coming out soon. I do want to pivot over to another project. We were reviewing those with limited confidence scores, right? And we previously kind of talked about maybe being able to tweak and fine tune these responses. So for that, my suggestion is that you maybe use the AI writer. So for example, you can highlight specific things instead of maybe the UK English, we want the American version. Maybe we want this to be shorter. Maybe we have an investor in France who's adamant about getting responses back in French. The AI writer tool will be able to help with all of these. So these are the out-of-the-box functionalities that can be utilized for this AI writer. And then we also have this custom prompt here, almost like a chat function. So for this, I'm just going to ask it to summarize in 4 bullets or less. And it should, tweak that language for us here in this box. And what's at work here is that the tool is only reviewing what's ever in that text paragraph response box over here. It will not be searching outside of that box, not going externally elsewhere as well. So now once it's in that kind of format, let me just move my camera here. You now have some additional options that you can run, whether that be to compare it, to then tweak the response quickly by replacing it, or as you can see, you can continue to run prompts on this. For now, I'm just going to show you what the comparison tool looks like and then hit that replace button on the side. Save as final. And here you go right here. And then once that's done, you'll have that response history as well here or in that revisions and history section. I think there's a hand up. If you could put your question in the Q&A, that would be helpful. And then we'll monitor that as those come in as well. Just bear with us 1 second. So once you have that, side-by-side view, you can review the responses that have been edited either here or in the revisions and history section. And then to walk through a handful of more examples, we have another project here In this case, the question is asking for the percentage of discretionary assets via the Word document. And the AI reasoning is essentially giving us the background here. What's really cool here is that it's essentially pulling that information from an image. And although the response or the 92 rough percentage isn't here directly, it's doing that calculation on the background. And I'll just pause here. It looks like there's some questions.
I want to point out as well, the source doc for Cantab is publicly available. We're not showing you private client information here. Just want to make sure we point that out. But yeah, there are a few questions. So um, for Rachel, does this AI tool only work for RFPs submitted via DiligenceVault? So with the premium features of DiligenceVault, you'd have the ability to upload any offline questionnaires that you receive, whether via email with Word and Excel, upload those into the platform, and then utilize some of these tools to complete those. So in this case, no, it wouldn't be for just those that are being sent via DiligenceVault. If you have the premium features, you'd be able to utilize it for other questionnaires you're receiving. Another one, can the AI extract from multiple pages of a source DDQ? Yes, 100%. Or Dave, you want to answer that one? Or I saw.
Yeah, multiple pages, the examples that we've kind of shown here. In this case, it's just pulling from one page. But let me go back to this questionnaire here where it was pulling from multiple pages, and it will cite that, right? So let me go to one with absolute confidence. And then show source details. Yeah, so like this is an example. It's pulling from multiple pages, and it'll cite all of the responses or all of the information related to that as well. And we're seeing another question here. Does it format the answer it inputs to an RFP uploaded from a different source? It somewhat depends on the response type. So for example, here we have a text and paragraph response. It's somewhat open-ended. It will source that from the documents, different sources within the document, and pull in and summarize its own kind of response. However, if there's like a specific response type, like a percentage, it will format it in that response type. So it kind of depends on how the template and question is structured. But yeah, it could vary. And that's why we wanted to show you, an example where there's an open-ended question, text paragraph, and then you can quickly tweak how the format looks. So, not only could you run like the summarize question or summarize prompt, but you could also maybe tweak it to a different format, tabular, for example.
Dave, I don't know if you have an example. There was another question for populate more complex DDQs with like table and drop downs. Do you have a table example here? I think you do on the other one, right?
Yeah, let me just, yeah, here's a very small table. But ultimately it could populate all kinds of response types. So this one happens to have a drop down or customized grid. See what other kind of question types this one has. Multi-select or multi-option. Here's another grid that was populated. So short answer, yes. And then just bear with me. I'm just going to go through a couple other examples. Perfect. So the last example I showed highlighted the image from a Word document and that getting populated into a percentage kind of style. Now, this other question is somewhat similar, that it's pulling from an Excel right here. So the percentage AUM growth, pulling from an Excel, and it's doing the calculation for you right here as a percentage growth. So here, let me just show you quickly what the Excel looks like. It's just giving you, AUM information year over year for the last few years. And the question is asking for percentage growth. from last year to this year. So it was able to do the calculation, pull from an Excel file, a table from in this case. So it can be pretty sophisticated. And of course, the layer of check is that confidence score and the AI reasoning as well. So I will pivot back. Are there any additional questions? Looks like we answered. Oh, there are probably more coming in. Grant, can you help me with these?
Yeah, so for the last few, sorry, there's a bunch that are popping in here. For the last few, I think there were more so questions around the source docs that are used. So there was one on being able to pull from like an image and having like an RFP or DDQ responses be generated from an image. And then there was another one on like the general question on source docs. I believe did you have an example there, Dave, of like the image, I think from like the Cantab one now?
Yeah, so here's an image, for example, that was utilized as a percentage in DiligenceVault right here, this grid for this image right here. So that's one example. It can work with an Excel. We answered that. How do we upload them? That is done through the AI generate with docs function. Back over here, autofill responses, AI generate from docs. Again, this is a premium feature. So if you want this enabled or want to take a demo on this, just reach out to ask@diligencevault.com. So that's how you would do that. And then the last question, if an RFP is uploaded and it is in Word and we use your tool to help write and export into the same format the RFP was uploaded. Yeah, you can essentially, for example, if you want that exported into Word, then you could just essentially use this export function for which it can be customized into your format, with your own letterhead and that kind of thing as well. So this format right here would just be the out of the box Diligence Vault version, but there is that customization approach to it as well. Perfect.
Or you can choose to just export in the original format that you uploaded it, Rachel.
Yeah. Perfect. So if you have additional questions, feel free to put them in that Q&A section here. We just wanted to kind of pivot, what we've seen for IR teams is oftentimes they're getting responses from or questions from multiple investors. Same kind of question base. The core of it is actually the same, maybe just worded differently in the investor's specific language. So what we have here is this Project Blaze, which is our standard data layer. So for this, as you can see, what you can potentially do is proactively share information with investors who request it, essentially AUM and performance level data. So this kind of right here, this view just shows you overall what your portfolio looks like, firm level, strategy level, product level. And when you are publishing that data, this is what that would look like for a specific fund. Now we have AUM information and track record or performance information, some of which still needs to be populated, but some of which has already been viewed and seen by investors. So this is what that would look like. You can see the number of views and recently shared information with. Let's say, for example, we needed to revise this first AUM table here. Maybe for Q3 2022, just throw in 33 million for now. Hit save, and then we can then publish that down here. And as you can see, it'll be shared with those 3 investor profiles. That was via this investor access section. So what this is trying to address is, again, that approach where multiple investors are asking for the same net thing, but now in a more standardized fashion. You can proactively update your information and then also share that with those who have requested that information. Certainly more to come here, but Outside of that, you can also see the revisions and recent updates that we've made through this tab as well. So I will pivot back over to our slides. We may have some additional questions. So this is kind of where we're at. Looks like there are a couple questions here. Last question, will this reduce bespoke requests we get from the DV investor clients? I would say yes. The idea is that we're standardizing some of these questions and allowing you to be proactive with it. Let me just answer that. Done. SMEs, can I invite my SME onto the platform for review? Yes. Well, let me backtrack. There are a couple other Blaze questions here. Does the LP recipient need to create a DiligenceVault account and be a registered user to access information? For now, yes, this information will only be available to DV users, but in the future that will change and we'll revise that and enhance that. And then sorry, last question. Looks like last question for Blaze. Can this tool be used to populate a quant Excel DDQ? Yes. Not just qualitative. Yeah, so that's possible. And then the qualitative stuff is forthcoming as well. That's done for the same DDQ. Pricing options. Blaze is free. AI is an add-on. We can discuss that on a one-on-one basis. As you may know, these things, AI specifically, is driven by usage, so the usage would vary by user. So we can have that discussion one-on-one in the future. Okay, so let me go back into DV and show you something I forgot to go over. And that relates to one of these questions here. Can I invite my SME onto the platform for review? So for example, in this questionnaire here, let's just say hypothetically, we want, this question to be reviewed and revised potentially by internal colleagues. So I'll just add Grant here. He can be the SME for this particular question. And then similarly, as you can see, we have a reviewer for this question. All of that information can get thrown into this assignments tab, where you'll be kind of apprised as to like what's going on, the progress and that kind of thing for both review and for question assignments as well. So that was done. It looks like there are some duplicate questions in here. So one question is, if for the same DDQ question, we have different versions or answers, can the AI tool capture all the different responses so we can tailor? So with that scenario, I guess it might be a question back to you. Would you be uploading multiple documents? If so, the AI tool can decipher between the two, meaning it would pick one, but if there were contradictions between the two, it will cite that. Now we're working on some enhancements there to potentially layer on some prioritization, meaning, if there's one document gets uploaded, number one, maybe as of date would be the prioritization methodology. And then the secondary document would be added as, a supplement almost. So I think maybe we would want to talk about that specifically with you, whoever asked that question, to dive a little bit deeper, and then provide some kind of like roadmap discussion points around that as well. And then the last question is, are there any benefits to this tool from perspective of the sender of the DDQ? Now for AI, the requester can also potentially use AI. So from the perspective of their side, we'll be adding more features to make sure that the question and response is complete and accurate. Or, if they want to use Doc AI, that's also something they can do too. Some of our clients from the requester side, asset allocator side, are essentially hand-holding some of their managers and doing a pre-filled populated draft of their responses using their own data and documents and sending that over to the manager to maybe streamline their approach. Regardless, with that kind of accuracy and sourcing methodology, I think they're finding it beneficial. So that's one kind of quick mention on that. And then I believe that might be it for the questions. So Grant, I'll pass it back to you in case you want to add any additional context to what we've been talking about.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, feel free to add more questions into the Q&A. I think this slide we have is like almost a recap, thinking of AI not just as a tool to assist, okay, hey, we're going to answer this RFP. It's more of a rethink and a process reshape. So obviously, as we've mentioned previously, there's many teams involved at a firm on any given request, a lot of different data points, different team members coming in to either answer questions, edit questions, or review questions. So thinking about this tool as more than just, okay, we're answering RFPs, but more of a process reshape and moving forward as a firm more efficiently. We do have a question. How many of your clients use DV as a content library and how many autofill using documents and AI? Dave, maybe you have a better idea on numbers for the
Yeah. So content library, a lot of our clients, the majority of our clients, Doc AI, this is relatively new, right? So we're seeing some adoption, but I would say based on the response to the poll question earlier, I think it said 40% of the respondents are not using AI today. So I think that kind of frames what we've seen so far from our clients this quarter and maybe late last quarter, meaning that they're still assessing AI tools. They're maybe still coming up with compliance okays and legal okays on using AI. So we're still in the early adoption phase, I wod say, but there's definitely a handful that have started to use it. So more and more we would expect in the near future.
And I think as you think of a content library, less than like the Doc AI, just using it to house Q&A pairs, whether it's from like our own standard materials or previously completed questionnaires, we have a number of clients that are using it for that today to house their own Q&A library that they can repurpose. And that's aside from the actual Doc AI of pulling from different documents to generate responses.
And then this last question, will Blaze continue to standardize more data sets? Yes. Or are the list of data points final? No, we're going to be working on more questions by year end and more to come as we continue to build this out as well. Security of the content library. I mean, this would be an instance for you specifically as the user. No other users should be able to get into it other than those that you approve at the firm level. And then just separately, we have, SOC 2 and some other security, components to our firm that we, take very seriously as well. If you have more specific questions, if you want to like dive a little bit deeper on that, we're happy to visit that on direct call, I would say. So yeah, from a client perspective, reach out to your client success manager if you are interested in a more targeted demo, pricing as well, or potential prospective clients, reach out to ask@diligencevault.com. That goes the same for our clients as well in case you want to use that email address. So again, thank you for the time. We'll take a quick look at any other Q&As that might be lingering here or there, but again, reach out to us if you have any questions or want to dive a little bit deeper on this.
Dave, I'll hang on a sec too for any outstanding questions.
So the recording to this call will get sent out as well as the takeaways. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely share that. And then just to comment, thank you. The AI looks powerful. Yep, we are, very excited about this, seeing some client adoption so far and looking forward to the next steps as we get close to 2026 as well. So I've seen the participants start to drop off. So I think this is a good time to end it. Again, thank you everybody for your time. Appreciate all the questions. And then again, reach out to us if you need anything else.